Hello, everyone. Welcome to Constitutional Truth. I'm your host, Shar, and today I'd like to talk to you about H.R. 127, the federal bill presented to the House of Representatives by none other than Houston's own Sheila Jackson Lee. Yeah, she gives us all kinds of fun stuff, doesn't she? Anyway, we're going to talk about H.R. 127, a bill to provide for the licensing of firearm and ammunition possession and the registration of firearms and to prohibit the possession of certain ammunition. I know a lot of other YouTubers or video producers, content creators have done some work on this and discussed it, but I want to discuss it with offering some solutions, viable and practical solutions for this bill. Most people think that engaging with government just requires voting, and that's it. That's all we have to do. And most people think that the United States or America is a democracy, which it isn't. It's a constitutional republic. But we have strayed so far from the Constitution that the U.S. is hardly recognizable as a republic anymore. So let's talk about this a little bit. So we'll go through the bill and discuss it and look at what it is and how it essentially amends the Bill of Rights, specifically the Second Amendment, via legislative fiat. And then we'll when we get to the end, we'll discuss the viable solutions that we can take towards correcting this. So Section 1, the short title says this act may be cited as the Sabika Sheikh Firearm Licensing and Registration Act. And of course, Sheila Jackson Lee is using this name to memorialize this bill, which is actually a recycling of a similar bill that was filed by, oh goodness gracious, Hank Jones, I can't remember his name, but he's the congressman who's so famously known for claiming that Guam would tip over if the island became too populated on one side or another. Anyway, but she's using this name as a way to memorialize an exchange student who was killed in the Texas school shooting a couple of years ago. So, of course, as you can see here, it's a bunch of pandering and whatnot, emotional pulling, and so forth. So Section 2, licensing of firearm and ammunition possession, registration of firearms. And here we get into the registration and licensing system. A firearm licensing and registration system. In general, Chapter 44 of Title 18 United States Code is amended by adding at the end the following. Licensing of firearm and ammunition possession. So it's not just firearm registration. We're going to license ammunition purchasing and possession, registration of firearms. In general, the Attorney General, through the ATF or BATFE, okay, shall establish a system for licensing the possession of firearms or ammunition in the United States and for the registration with the BATF of each firearm present in the United States. Firearm registration system. Required information. Under the firearm registration system, the owner of a firearm shall transmit to the Bureau the make, model, and serial number of the firearm, the identity of the owner of the firearm, the date the firearm was acquired by the owner, and where the firearm is or will be stored, and a notice specifying the identity of any person to whom and any period of time during which the firearm will be loaned to the person. So pay close attention to subsection A here. We have to give them all of this information that's already stored with our local FFL or FFL when we purchase our firearms. Information that the ATF already has by default. information that is already maintained by the NICS, NCIS, I never can keep that straight, system. Each and every time we have to do a background check. Deadline for supplying information. The transmission required by paragraph 1 shall be made, in the case of a firearm acquired before the effective date of this section, within 3 months after the effective date of this section. Or, in the case of a firearm acquired on or after the effective date, on the date the owner acquires the firearm. So, those of us who already own firearms, we've got 3 months to get this done. Of course, all I can think about is during the Obama years when they were trying to do the healthcare exchanges and that insane boondoggle, constant website crashes and so on and so forth, and the billions of dollars that was spent on creating that. But then when we go to assuming that we get licensed, mind you, anytime we go to purchase a firearm, we're going to have to go through the NCIS, and then we're going to have to go through another system before we can walk out with the firearm to register the crap. This is insanity. The database. Now, this is real fun. In general, the Attorney General shall establish and maintain a database of all firearms registered pursuant to this subsection. Access. Now, you're going to love this. The Attorney General shall make the contents of the database accessible to all members of the public, all federal, state, and local law enforcement authorities, all branches of the United States Armed Forces, and all state and local governments as defined by the Bureau. Isn't this fun? All members of the public. So, your Moms Demand Action friends that live down the way, they're going to have access to this information. The blue-haired socialists are going to have access to this information. And of course, my favorite are the folks that don't currently obtain their weapons via, quote, lawful, end quote, means, are going to have access to this information. Now, I'm thinking to myself, we already have issues when our firearms end up stolen, however it is that they end up stolen, with our police and sheriffs and the FBI and all other forms of law enforcement being able to recover them. We call them, we tell them, we report them, we give them the serial number, images if we happen to have them, and so on and so forth, because we have to do that already, okay? We do that to protect ourselves and to protect the public, so that if that firearm ends up in the hands of a criminal and something happens, we aren't held responsible for any crimes. But in the vast majority of cases, those guns are never recovered and returned to us. Now imagine this publicly accessible shopping list, because remember, the make, model, and serial number of the firearm and where the firearm is or will be stored. Okay, so they're going to have your address. They're going to have the location within your address of where this firearm is stored. Back bedroom, under bed, on top of refrigerator, gun safe, closet, garage, shed and backyard, whatever it is. So we're creating a publicly accessible shopping list. Crime will increase. Mark my words. Should H.R. 127 pass, go into effect without any alterations, amendments, or changes, not be challenged to the Supreme Court and be knocked down, this is going to create a publicly accessible shopping list for ne'er-do-wells. Crime will increase, and the police will not be able to handle it. Once these guns hit the street, we are disarmed and the criminals have them. Not only are we going to have break-ins and robberies increase, but then they're going to turn around and use those guns against us and we are disarmed. Okay, fantabulous. Licensing system. This is fun. General license, except as otherwise provided in this subsection, the Attorney General shall issue to an individual a license to possess a firearm and ammunition if the individual, 1, has attained 21 years of age. So if you're 20, 19, or 18 years old, you can no longer own your shotguns, your ARs, or any other rifles. If you reside in a state that allows you to own handguns, you can no longer own your handguns. So if you're in the military, you no longer get to bear arms outside of military functions. If you're a single mom under the age of 21, you can no longer protect your children. You can vote. You can get married. You can do all that other stuff. You can engage in other contracts. You can enlist in the military and be sent overseas to die for your country. But by God, you can't own a firearm. After applying for the license, of course, you have to apply for the license. Undergoes a criminal background check conducted by the National Instant Criminal Background Check System established under Section 103. We already do that. We already do that. Undergoes a psychological evaluation conducted in accordance with paragraph 2, and the evaluation does not indicate that the individual is psychologically unsuited to possess a firearm. Y'all are going to love this psych eval. Successfully completes a training course certified by the Attorney General in the use, safety, and storage of firearms that includes at least 24 hours of training, and demonstrates that on issuance of the license, the individual will have in effect an insurance policy issued under subsection D. Antique firearm display license. Any of you guys have your parents' or grandparents' or great-grandparents' firearms and keep them on display? You'll have to get licensed for that too. Attorney General shall issue to an individual a license to display an antique firearm in a residence of the individual if the individual is the holder of a license issued under subparagraph A. So you have to get licensed under the previous licensing requirement. Supply proof that the individual owns an antique firearm. How the hell you do that, I don't know. Describes the manner in which the firearm will be displayed in accordance with regulations prescribed by the Attorney General and certifies that the firearm will be so displayed, and demonstrates that the individual has provided for storage of the firearm in a safe or facility approved by the Attorney General for the storage of firearms. So you can't really display it. It's got to be in a safe. So what in the actual fuck? How is this a display license when it has to be in a facility or safe? She-Jack has lost her ever-loving mind. Of course, she's not really intelligent enough to have written this law. Like I said, it's a a rewarm. They're leftovers. It's they put this crap out all the time. But now that they hold, the Dems hold all 3 branches of government now. I mean, they might as well hold the SCOTUS too. They think they can do anything they want to, and they kind of can, and because Republicans are Democrat-like, so whatever. Military-style weapons license. Haha, yeah, another license. Whew. The Attorney General shall issue to an individual a license to own and possess a military-style weapon if the individual is the holder of a license issued under subparagraph A. So again, got to get the first license, and after applying for a license under this subparagraph, successfully completes a training course certified by the Attorney General in the use, safety, and storage of the weapon that includes at least 24 hours of training and live fire training. All right, the psych eval. A psychological evaluation is conducted in accordance with this paragraph if the evaluation is conducted in compliance with such standards as shall be established by the Attorney General. The evaluation is conducted by a licensed psychologist approved by the Attorney General. So, pretty sure we're not going to get to use our current psychologist, assuming we have one. Not probably going to get to use one that's, covered under our PPO plan. As deemed necessary by the licensed psychologist involved, the evaluation included a psychological evaluation of other members of the household in which the individual resides. And as part of the psychological evaluation, the licensed psychologist interviews any spouse of the individual, any former spouse of the individual. Yes, I did say that. I want y'all to know I copy pasted directly from the bill at congress.gov. Okay? I did not type this out because I'm lazy like that. I copy pasted directly from congress.gov. And at least 2 other persons who are a member of the family of or an associate of the individual to further determine the state of the mental, emotional, and relational stability of the individual in relation to firearms. Considering that the latest statistics on divorce is 2 out of every 3 marriages end in divorce, 2/3 of us are assuming this passes. Okay, 2/3 of us are going to be getting in touch with flowers.com and Sasquatch.com and kissing up to our exes to pretty please, sugar on top with cherries and crushed peanut sprinkles. Don't diss me in the psych eval. Some of us are just going to be like, fuck it, I'm not applying because there ain't no kind of bribe going to get our ex to to be asked enough to play nice. Okay, this is insane. It gets more insane on the psych eval, but this is just absolutely fucking insane. If you even if you're in a current marriage where you've got a spouse that's like, I don't like guns, I don't want them in the house. They're just gonna be like, no, I don't like guns. And they don't have to even say anything ugly other than I don't like guns. And the blue-haired, crazy feminazi psych that they're gonna pick for you is gonna say, no way, no how, you're not licensed. Okay, denial of a license. Required. The Attorney General shall deny such a license to an individual if the individual is prohibited by federal law. The individual has been hospitalized with a mental illness, disturbance, or diagnosis, including depression, homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, attempted suicide, or addiction to a controlled substance within the meaning of the Controlled Substances Act, or alcohol, or a brain disease, including dementia or Alzheimer's. Well, hey, cool. We don't have to worry about Joe getting one. This depression thing, though, and the attempted suicide thing, the addiction one, I mean, it's just, but, and the alcohol, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. That's going to wipe out the vast majority of people. And Oregon, you recently decriminalized everything under the sun, including magic mushrooms. Y'all just shot yourselves in the foot. But I digress. Think about the depression thing, though. How many people have been diagnosed with depression after losing a grandparent or a family member or whatever? And it was a short-term depression, okay? But, you were close to this person. Well, here you see it right here in black and white. You're going to be denied. Okay? How many recovering alcoholics do we have in the U.S.? You're going to be denied. The dementia, the Alzheimer's thing. While most of us would say someone who is at a stage of dementia or Alzheimer's doesn't need to be driving, doesn't need to have access to weapons, okay? These are issues that should be left up to family members and associates, not the federal government. Okay? It's much easier for a family member or an associate to take away the keys, to take away the guns, to take away the, okay, than to leave it up to the government. Because here we have depression, attempted suicide, addiction to controlled substance. Okay, I mean, come on. Not everybody that fits these areas that are listed are going to be danger to themselves or members of society. And it still doesn't preclude them from having the right to protect themselves. This one, on account of conduct that endangers self or others. What's conduct that endangers self or others? Well, members of Antifa and BLM who went around the nation burning, looting, and murdering during the Summer of Love 2020, will they be precluded? Or are we talking about somebody that runs around screaming at other people? Is that conduct that, I mean, it's ludicrous. The Attorney General may deny a license to an individual if the psychological evaluation referred to in paragraph 2 indicates that the individual has a chronic mental illness or disturbance or a brain disease referred to in subparagraph A2L. Okay, so maybe you weren't hospitalized, but you currently have a chronic. It's addicted to a controlled substance, has attempted to commit suicide, or prior psychological treatment or evaluation of the individual indicated that the individual engaged in conduct that posed a danger to self or others. Suspension of license. A license is issued under this subsection to an individual who is under indictment for a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year is hereby suspended. Authorized for lack of firearm insurance. The Attorney General may suspend a license issued under this subsection to an individual who has violated Section 922DD in the most recent 12-month period. Revocation of license. A license issued under this subsection to an individual who is or becomes prohibited. Expiration of license. A license issued to an individual under this subsection shall expire. I'll let you guys read that. I mean, it just, it's just some of that legalese crap. Okay, here's the renewal stuff. Okay, and how you renew it. I'm not going to go through it. It's legalese crap, and frankly, I don't want this damn thing to pass. Y'all can pause. Firearm insurance. In general, the Attorney General shall issue to any person who has applied for a license pursuant to subsection C and has paid to the Attorney General the fee specified in paragraph 2 of this subsection a policy that insures the person against liability for losses and damages resulting from the use of any firearm by the person during the 1-year period that begins with the date the policy is issued. The fee specified in this paragraph is $800. This right here is so completely and totally unconstitutional, it's not even funny. An $800 insurance policy annually paid to the federal government. Didn't we have a Chief Justice? He's a cuck, mind you, but didn't we have a Chief Justice have to reevaluate the individual mandate for the Affordable Care Act in order to justify the individual mandate as a tax? In order to declare it constitutional, despite the fact that no matter what the frick you call it, it's unconstitutional. How in the hell are we going to try to, what mental gymnastics are we going to go through to justify demanding Americans paid the government $800 for them to issue a government supplied insurance policy? Or is the federal government going to contract with their chosen private contractors, like State Farm, for instance? I mean, I don't know. It's just the first insurance company that came to mind. And have them come up with firearms policies? It just doesn't make any damn sense to me. Here we get into definitions of military-style weapons are defined as, okay, the term military-style weapon means any of the firearms or copies or duplicates of the firearms in any caliber known as Norinco, Mitchell, and Poly Technologies, Avtomat, Kalashnikovs, Action Arms, Israeli Military Industries, Uzi and Galil, Beretta AR-70, SC-70, Colt AR-15. Okay, so that's where we have to get the separate extra license. I mean, how many of us own an AR-15? FNL, Falls, okay, SWD M10, M11, M11-9, and M12, Steyr, AUG, Intratec, Tech 9, Tech DC-9, and Tech 22, and revolving cylinder shotguns such as or similar to the Street Sweeper and Striker 12. A semi-automatic rifle that has an ability to accept a detachable magazine and it has at least two of a folding or telescoping stock, a pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon, a bayonet mount, a flash suppressor or threaded barrel designed to accommodate a flash suppressor, and a grenade launcher. Well, shit. Can't keep my grenade launcher. A semi-automatic pistol that has an ability to accept a detachable magazine and has at least two of an ammunition magazine that attaches to the pistol outside of the pistol grip, a threaded barrel capable of accepting a barrel extender, flash suppressor, forward hand grip, or silencer, a shroud that is attached to or partially or completely encircles the barrel and that permits the shooter to hold the firearm with the non-trigger hand without being burned, a manufactured weight of 50 ounces or more when the pistol is unloaded, and a semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm. So, basically our AR-style pistols, okay? And a semi-automatic shotgun that has at least two of a folding or telescoping scope, a pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon, a fixed magazine capacity in excess of 5 rounds, and an ability to accept a detachable magazine. No, 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 boys and girls. You can't have none of this fun stuff. I wonder how Beto reacted when he read this. I mean, you know Beto O'Rourke has read this. I wonder what, if he got aroused or anything reading this. Prohibitions and penalties. Section 922 of such titles amended by adding at the end the following: it shall be unlawful for a person to possess a firearm or ammunition unless the person is carrying a valid license. Okay, and in the case of a firearm owned by the person, the firearm is registered to the person under this, or in the case of a firearm owned by another person, the firearm is so registered to such other person, and such other person has notified the Attorney General that the firearm has been loaned out to the other person. Okay. Here we go. It shall be unlawful for a person to transfer a firearm or ammunition to a person who is not licensed. It shall be unlawful for a person to sell or give a firearm or ammunition to another person unless the person has notified the Attorney General of the sale or gift. It shall be unlawful for a person to loan a firearm or ammunition to another person unless the person has notified the Attorney General of the loan, including the identity of such other person and the period for which the loan is made. How the hell do you loan ammunition? It's not like, I mean, really? That's like loaning food. You don't expect to get it back. Anyway, it shall be unlawful for a person holding a valid license issued under section, to transfer a firearm to an individual who has not attained 18 years of age. Shouldn't that be 21? Didn't they say you can't have one unless you're 21? A person who possesses a firearm or to whom a license is issued under this section shall have in effect an insurance policy. This is the fun stuff. Whoever knowingly violates those previous sections that I read, and you can go back and forth and look at it, shall be fined not less than $75,000 and not more than $150,000, imprisoned not less than 15 years and not more than 25 years, or both. And I'm not going to keep reading these out. I'll let y'all pause and read them so you can go back and forth and look. But the penalties are pretty gross. This one right here, D, I mean, the transferee of the firearm possesses or uses the firearm during or in relation to a crime, an unintentional shooting, or suicide. The person lending them gets a ridiculous fine and imprisonment. Certain ammunition. Okay, this one basically says you can't have anything above 50 cal. And then it shall be unlawful for any person to possess a large capacity ammunition feeding device. Next page will tell you what that is. But this tells you who it shall not be applicable to, which is basically the government and anyone contracted to the government to use or possess these things. Large capacity ammunition feeding device defined. The term large capacity ammunition feeding device means a magazine, belt, drum, feed strip, or similar device that has a capacity of or that can be readily restored or converted to accept more than 10 rounds of ammunition, but does not include an attached tubular device designed to accept and capable of operating only with 22 caliber rimfire ammunition. Oh boy. This section essentially makes illegal many, many handguns due to the fact that the standard issued magazines are larger than 10, and you can't just take a 17 round magazine and turn it into 10 and pop it in there. That's not how it works. And then we've got the fines for having more than a 30 round, or excuse me, more than a 10 round. So, all bills submitted have a constitutional authority statement. And Jack put on there, Congress has the, it's over here on the left, Congress has the power to enact this legislation pursuant to the following. This bill is enacted pursuant to the power granted to Congress under Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 1 and 18 of the United States Constitution. Okay, over on the right, it explains about constitutional authority statements. I'm going to just go on ahead and skip over that. Y'all can read it. So here's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So let's discuss this. There's nothing about this bill that has to do with taxation aside from the $800 fee for the mandatory insurance. If collecting that fee were to pay debt, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare of the U.S., then it would be legitimate under this section. But it's not. It's in exchange for a government-issued insurance plan, and it only applies, okay, here's where it's non-uniform. It only applies to those who own guns and apply to own guns. So therefore, this is BS, okay? Furthermore, DC's gotten completely ignorant on what the general welfare clause means. They think it means welfare as in what we think of welfare, charity. Okay? I would recommend that you pull up the cod fishery debate. It's between Mr. Livermore and James Madison. Read the full thing. James Madison actually says if we bail out the cod fishery system, then what we'll end up doing is having rampant and runaway federal financing of education and roads and post offices, and basically he was foretelling the future. Licensing and issuing government insurance is not a tax, duty, impost, or excise. Okay? Shut up. Now let's look at Clause 18. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or office thereof. This is the last clause in Section 8. It authorizes Congress to make all laws which is necessary and proper, and that is the important part, necessary and proper, in order to get the job done for the previous 17 enumerated authorities. None of those previous 17 enumerated authorities allow for weapons registration. In fact, there's 2 clauses that talk about the militia as far as calling it forth, arming it, okay, putting it into service until the army can be formed, and so forth. It doesn't have anything to do with psychological evaluation, banning ammunition, purchasing government products, licensing, and everything else that's in this bill. So this alleged constitutional authority is complete and total utter bullshit. So we have the 4th Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So the registry right here is completely out of keeping with the 4th Amendment. I think anybody with half a brain can see this, because we won't be secure in our persons, houses, papers, and effects. And then we have the 9th Amendment here. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Samuel Adams, in his Rights of the Colonist on 20 November 1772, and there's the link for it, okay? And one of the things he says is the natural liberty of man is to be free from any superior power on earth and not to be under the will of or legislative authority of man, but only to have the law of nature for his rule. And that's where we've gone from one side to the other. I mean, just a complete 180 contrast from where we started to where we are today in the United States. It's absolutely insane. There's a lot of other things that he discusses in that writing with regards to natural law. Samuel Adams was a very wise man and did a lot of excellent writing. And so we have the right to be left alone. We have the right for our government to only make laws that are the least restrictive in nature, and HR 127 is very, very restrictive. So here are some viable and practical solutions that we can make. Okay, obviously you're going to contact your federal reps and your federal senators on this. I mean, since this is in the House, because Jack is a representative, you want to contact. I would suggest all of your state representatives, but most assuredly your district representative. And I would recommend doing more than just tweeting at them, because few of them actually read their Twitter responses. And they all have, if you go to congress.gov and, look them up, they all have some sort of email method of contacting them, some sort of digital method of contacting them. But I would recommend actually picking up the phone and calling them. Okay. It's highly unlikely you'll get to speak directly to them, but you'll get to speak to someone in their office. Okay. But I also suggest that you write an actual letter. Those are so much more effective than just emailing or making a phone call. You could even send a fax. Those are those are just below an actual letter. Okay. And tell them you don't want this to pass. Tell them that it violates that it's legislatively amending the Bill of Rights to just gut the Second Amendment. It violates your Fourth Amendment. It violates your Ninth Amendment, and it violates the state's 10th Amendment. Okay? Tell them that you don't want your personal property listed in a publicly searchable database, that you don't want your local police to be overwhelmed with more crime, that you don't want to have to apply for a permission slip from the federal government, that you don't want to have to submit to a psychological evaluation and drag your ex-spouse into it. Just go through the bill and let them know all of the heinous things that you don't want to have to submit to, that are completely and totally out of the purview of the federal government. Because I highly doubt any of them has actually read this. But you can also go to your local and state government, okay? Reach out to your police chief. And this is where you get personal, okay? You don't pick up the phone and call, and you don't write a letter unless you absolutely have to. You go in person, schedule an appointment, and go in person and talk to them. Bring a copy of this bill, print it out. Bring a copy of this bill to them. Use a highlighter and hit the high points on it, and explain to them that you expect him or her to nullify this bill if it should pass. And nullification is not just with a jury. Nullification is where your state and local governing agencies refuse to abide by a law. They ignore it. Thomas Jefferson said that nullification was the strongest deterrent against unconstitutional laws. You nullify it into non-existence. So you go to your police chief, you reach out to your sheriff, you go to your city council, you go to your county commission, and you ask them all to nullify HR 127, and you explain. The biggest one is going to be touching on the crime increase from this registry. Okay? Then you go to your state government, your reps and senators, your governor, state attorney general, because they're going to be the ones having to deal with the crime. Ask them all to sponsor legislation to nullify HR 127. I learned earlier today that Texas is doing this. Okay? There's already a bill that's been filed in Texas to nullify past, current, and future legislation at the federal government level with regard to gun laws. Okay? And even ask them to create a sanctuary state for guns. Okay? So, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to ask you kindly. I know it went long because I kind of babbled a little bit. But I'm going to ask you kindly. This is the maiden show for this channel. If you would like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. and help me go ahead and get this out. If you enjoyed it, I appreciate it. And let's go on ahead and keep fighting. I'm not just focusing on guns. I'm, of course, going to focus on other legislation that's out there. The current administration, I mean, I'm not trying to say that I was all up on Trump. He did some really dumb stuff with regard to guns as well, and other things for that matter. But this current administration that we have, Biden is up to what, 11 million executive orders. I mean, you can't legislate via executive orders, but I'll discuss executive orders and their purpose at another time, and things that we can do with that. But I'll be making some more videos and discussing some other things. As you see from the show or from the channel description, they're, federal, and I'll focus on Texas, my state, with regard to that. If you live in another state and have something you'd like for me to look at, make a comment and let me know. Shoot me a link to some legislation. I'll be more than happy to dig into it. But other than that, thank you very much for sticking around, and y'all have a great day.